Welcome to the Godreports podcast. Today's interview is with Joshua Curry, a 22-year-old that attends Asbury College in Kentucky. On Wednesday, February 8th, Curry attended what appeared to be an unexceptional chapel service. A visiting speaker with the Christian and Missionary Alliance gave a talk about sacrificial love in Hughes Auditorium. It was a message preached on Romans 12, what love looks like in action, Curry recalls. After the message, about 20 or so students stayed in the chapel. Curry went back to his dorm room. A few hours went by, and then he heard a surprising report. There was still worship going on in the chapel. Here's Godreports journalist Mark Ellis with Mr. Curry talking about the Asbury revival. Enjoy.
Objectively, I guess what happened was last Wednesday, the 8th, we had a chapel service, just part of our normal series of chapel messages. And it was, a message was preached on Romans 12, just what love looks like in action. Yeah. And after the message, about 20 or so students stayed in the chapel. The chapel gets out at like 10:50. Go to the next round of classes start at 11, so it's not unusual for there to be worship at the end of the service that kind of runs up to the last minute. Except this time they just stayed. And then after sort of the next hour or so, I wasn't there. I had gone back up to my room, my dorm room. But some of my friends have said that once all the next round of classes let out, a lot of people walked by and heard that there was still worship going on. And so then they filtered back into the chapel and just sort of never left.
So this was midday on last Wednesday.
Yes.
And how soon were you there?
Well, yes, I'll tell you about that. So, it was interesting. I was actually feeling very poorly spiritually. And after Wednesday's chapel, I had sort of just slunk back up to my dorm room. I was sort of just really worn out because I just believed that all of these things, a lot of like just way of life I'd experienced here was just tired and repetitive. And I wrote down in my journal, I said, I'm tired of milquetoast Protestantism that foremost to be affirming. I want liberty from slavery. I want right and wrong. I want forgiveness of sins. I want a zealous spirit. And I said, I know that I would refuse God if I was afraid of him. The culture, the world, everything would lure me away. I did not love Christ more. My Baptist grandmother says that all that matters is an individual's relationship with Jesus. But I feel like I can't find a mentor who can explain who Jesus is, nor articulate the gospel without subverting it in the next breath. It's all wrong. I am suspicious of everything, and I can't discern necessary good from overwhelming evil. It is a poor state to be in. My faith, because I have seen too much of Christ to ever not be a Christian, that my faith is ever distant, but impenetrably fixed in my soul. And then I wrote down, I said, illuminate me, God. Amen. And this is, when I had finished writing that, I heard out in the hall, two guys were talking, and they said, oh, they're all still in chapel. And so I did go back to see, and sure enough they were, and in my It's not hyped up. It's just serene. And I was speaking to a friend of mine. There was the speaker who had gone home to sort of take a nap. He'd flown in, and normally these speakers, they fly in and they leave. But when I say gone home, he would, where they were staying here.
Mm-hmm.
That he had heard that they were coming, so he came back and really just helped lead us through just some worship to just confession to more preaching, and just people started confessing to each other, and there was just such an upwelling of love that you could be totally open with just people you wouldn't have been close to at all. And one of my now friends, my new friends, he said that he had confessed everything he had ever done in his life, and he had never felt more free. Like I said, none of this was really planned or expected, but there's just this, I don't even really want to call it a weight. It's not a weight, but just this gravitas in the chapel. On Thursday, there was just like a strong wind on the campus, and it was perfect weather. But there was this strong wind and this like wall cloud that was just sitting over us, really. And I'm telling you what I have experienced. And I did spend some time in there, a lot of time in there over the weekend. And it's like, after a while, it's like my face started burning almost. Like my cheeks were hot, and when I left and went back up to my room, it really looked like my skin was sunburnt, sort of. And then there were things like, in the mornings I would wake up and I would read some scripture, and I would just feel led to different passages. The first one on Thursday was Psalm 27, and then I went into the chapel, and that's what they were preaching from.
Psalm 27?
Yes. And then I was reading from John 9, and I went into the chapel, and then that's what they were preaching from.
Let me go back. Excuse me. You said did the weather conditions seem unusual?
I know some people said they were. I'll tell you, I did not, I noticed them, oh yeah, this is a bit strange, but I didn't really pay too much attention to it myself at the time. I mean, I remarked on it, oh, it's very windy today. But I know, at least there were some people who were saying that they had walked around the whole chapel on the outside, and it just felt like the wind, no matter what side of the building they were on, it was blowing towards the chapel. But I did not experience that for myself, but that is what some
okay. There was some other person who was talking about this cloud being unusual. Did you notice anything about that?
There was a big, it was a clear sky except for this one big, dark wall cloud that kind of just encompassed the horizon. And, that's weather. But it was there on Thursday.
But it was not necessarily positioned over the chapel or anything.
It was not right. It wasn't like the chapel exclusively, no. So I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Based on that. But it was on a very windy day, it was just a thing that didn't move.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
About it.
Yeah. So you were struck by the scriptures you were led to were ones that whoever was leading it was also led to.
Yes. And that's the thing I also want to touch on is leading it, there haven't really been, like, there's not a leader here, really. Like, there's no rock star preacher type thing. And there are some of the shepherds, some of the campus chaplains, but they're just facilitating things. They aren't leading them. And I was, even the speaker of the message that started it on Wednesday, he had prayed that he would be forgotten. And I would say that was the only thing that made Wednesday's message different from any other chapels, was just there was a real reverence for the Word of God that he was preaching, from which he was preaching, and an emphasis on sort of genuine repentance, and then also God's ability to do more than any person actually spreading the message can do.
I listened to that message online and thought it was very good, and on the theme of sacrificial love.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's really what it was, is that they were just, there was a student a couple of days ago who stood up and gave a testimony where he said that he had learned that, this revival, it isn't hype. He said it's ordinary people who are hungry for God.
Were they hungry before this started?
Yes.
Okay.
They were, but in a sense of where a lot of people, we didn't know what to do, really. It was like sort of, it's a weird place to be as a young Christian, and I will speak for myself here. I mean, I have talked with people about this, and I know sort of the general tenor, but I am giving you my perspective. It's just that we sort of feel like we've kind of been hitched to a sinking ship. That's how we had been feeling. And it didn't really matter how much we loved it, because it was still sinking. And in a way, a lot of, as I was saying in the beginning, a lot of this just kind of repeating the same things while everything seems to still be getting worse. It's kind of just draining a lot of us. This is part of what I say to people about this, is that, there were a lot of people who were just tired of having to come to chapel 3 days a week. We do, it's mandatory. 3 days a week for an hour. And then now we've been there like almost a full week at this point, voluntarily for multiple hours a day.
When you talk about the sinking ship, what do you mean by that?
And again, for me, I'm speaking for me, but the problem nowadays is just sort of the flood of available information and misinformation. In the faith, there was a lot of division and not a lot of certainty about any sort of, just basic orthodoxy or orthopraxy, even.
So you felt like you were going through the motions, so to speak, of maybe a more nominal faith, or even verging on a dead faith.
Yes.
And but you wanted something more, and you weren't sure how that was going to happen.
Yes.
And then this happened.
Yes, again, sort of. Yes.
What is different that causes students to want to stay in the chapel for hours upon hours?
Well, I mean, I could give the really basic answer of it's God. But it just feels like a genuine sanctuary now. Like it feels like a holy place.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, it's like, Moses in the burning bush. Why did he go up to see the bush? It's because it was burning, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that. It's like it's an actual sanctuary.
In turn, you mentioned the word serene, so you feel the sort of that unusual peace that only God can supply supernaturally.
Yes. And I think even to return to Psalm 27, verses 4 and 5, at least as I've got in front of me, one thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord, and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent, and set me upon a high rock. Set me high upon a rock. But yeah, I don't know, it's just this call to holiness. I'll say this, in our chapel, it's a very stark chapel. I think, along the walls there are 3 large stained glass windows, but other than that, it's sort of just, white plaster and wood.
Unadorned.
Yeah, and, but written at the very top in the back, it's Asbury was a Free Methodist school originally, and so written in the very back, at the very top, are the words, holiness unto the Lord. And that's what's drawing us, I think, is there's just a real holiness there. And that's what this is about, I think, mainly, and that's what people are being called to, is just holiness and a holy love. Since you did watch the message from that Wednesday, I'm going to refer to one of the things he said, where he said that to become the love of God, we have to experience the love of God. And I think there have been some things, I'll share actually a bit more, where that have sort of proved to me that, even God's righteousness depends on God's love. It's like we often, say these things sort of in tension about God, where we say, he's loving and he's wrathful, and he's loving and he's righteous.
Yes, we compartmentalize them.
Yes, but I think one of the things that's been really becoming clear here, I think, to everyone is that just God is righteous because he's loving. It's not like 2 different attributes. And so we're being called to holiness, we're being called to holy love. That love, sort of, what I have been hungry for, searching for, and all this, is found only in Jesus. All my human relationships will be filtered through and inseparable from Jesus' love for me.
That's good.
Again, I told you I felt so much like I was on a sinking ship that I hadn't really taken in that Christ has won, It's what God will do. He forgave us, and he told us to forgive everyone who's wronged us. I called my father, and I told him that Jesus loved him more than I do.
How did he take that?
How did he take it? Well, I have a very tumultuous family, but I think it got to him. Because I did forgive
Did you express that in the conversation, or the forgiveness has been ongoing?
I expressed it in the conversation, but I mean, it's sort of a both, answer to that.
Yes, yes.
But I was able to do it.
Mm-hmm. You felt compelled by love.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and it wasn't, even to go back to what I said, I would iterate the message, or the bit from the message again. It wasn't about white knuckling it. It wasn't about just striving for it. It was just something that God enabled me to do because I had been dwelling with God.
Mm. What is actually taking place in the chapel? Is it a mix of worship and music, or worship and messages and prayer, or what?
Yes. So there's been during the day there is a lot of sung worship, which is not. There's not even like one group of people up there all the time doing that. They rotate through different musicians. I think some people from the community have come in, and then we also have a whole worship arts major here at our college. But then there are people that just goes, and then people sort of gather together in smaller groups to pray for each other. I've seen people doing Bible study things together. There's that sort of thing. The altar is open always, and so people come up and are able to just lay things at the foot of the cross. And then in the evenings they've been holding actual services. So there's preaching, and then we still have our regularly scheduled chapels, or we have had. So the thing started on Wednesday. So on both Friday and Monday, we had the scheduled speaker come and give the message they were going to give.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And is this ongoing 24/7, or are there breaks?
Basically, yes. Yes. So I think officially what they've been doing is they've been on days where we have chapel, they officially start at the chapel time, 10 a.m. And then I think they've been trying to officially end at 11 p.m. each night, just to give people a chance to rest.
Right.
Because we need to sleep.
Yes, even Jesus got tired and slept.
Yeah, and so, but I know that a lot of people stay and a lot of people come. And it's not, it's not like it's the same people all the time. Everyone is coming and going, and the rhythms of our life are still happening. It's just, now we might run, back to chapel between classes if we have a spare hour, or, instead of going off and doing something else.
Mm.
So, and I do know some people have been basically sleeping in the chapel, so it is, I'd say it's sort of like a loose 24/7 type thing,
Mm-hmm.
where, I don't, it's not packed full at 4 a.m, but there are people around, and certainly I know they've been trying to, other churches have been opening their doors, and there's a seminary across the street that's opened their chapel, because there have just been too many people coming here to actually, be in the one building.
Yes. It sounds like a wonderful outpouring of the Spirit. And have you read much about historical revivals?
I don't know too much, no. I mean, I know the Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, but I don't know the detailed history of things like that, or even the 1970 thing here, which they talk about.
Mm-hmm. A man who mentored me, Ray Ortland, was involved at the Wheaton College revival, and also I think at Asbury, or they were happening about the same time in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about, he was the plan speaker, for a chapel service, and he never actually got to speak because the revival sort of hit, and what sparked it was confession, and it was a student athlete who got up and confessed things, and then one after another, students started getting up and confessing to one another, and it went on all night long. A service that normally would end at 9 o'clock or something. But he said before this happened, there was a dead orthodoxy that was there, and students were disinterested in chapel to the extent that they would bring magazines in to read while they were supposed to be at chapel or engaging in the chapel. Instead, they were reading, news magazines or something. So there's just a fascinating parallel in those two aspects of what you're describing. That confession was at the heart of it, and also the conditions were such that God moved to wake up people out of a slumber. And in these the historical record is God using revival sovereignly to so the church would not die throughout human history. It's like blowing on the embers.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what it feels like. I mean, yeah, I think I've said it already, but I'll say it again. It's like, yeah, people would always groan about, having to show up for an hour a day for every 3 days, 3 days a week.
Yes.
Now we've been there for a whole week voluntarily.
And they can't wait to get back.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, I got out of rehearsal, it was 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, I feel like I need to go back to chapel before I go to bed.
Isn't that remarkable? But it's so intangible, what you're describing, that, it's not like, I don't know, it's just kind of fascinating the way God draws people.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing, is just the whole campus has been sort of transformed. I mean, people are just nicer, really, and just, on my dorm hall, they have all these whiteboards that would, occasionally there'd just be all sorts of, crass humor scrawled on it, because, we're a bunch of, college-age guys.
Yeah.
And but this week, it's like they've all been replaced by, just praises to God.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
What was your major?
Me? I am an ancient languages major and a theater minor.
Okay. What a combination.
Yeah, it was sort of accidental. I started out, when I got here, I'm a senior. I was like, I'm going to be a very serious student. I was going to do history and theology and Greek and Hebrew. But I'd done theater for 10 years just as a child, and I was like, it's too frivolous to actually do. But then I realized about halfway through my time here that I had to do something I enjoyed or I'd die, basically. So I picked up the minor, and the minor really means I spend about 80% of my time in theater, because rehearsals take a long time, and there's always work to be done. If I'm not on stage, I'm backstage doing various technical things.
Okay.
So I had to drop a lot of the other stuff, but I was left with the ancient languages major. So yeah, I study Greek and Hebrew.
And is that because are you interested in an academic sort of course?
You're gonna laugh. Not really. I just wanted to read scripture.
Okay.
And yeah, the way things are looking right now, it's looking like I actually will be able to end up in theater somewhere.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I get to audition in about a month, and at the Southeastern Theater Conference, which represents the whole Southeast, and 3 of us from the university got selected as part of the audition process.
Wonderful. Congratulations. All right. Well, Joshua, it's been wonderful to talk to you, and let's stay in touch. I may try to reach you again as things progress.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the God Reports podcast. If you'd like more information on God Reports, feel free to check out godreports.com or continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel